Thanks to each of our witnesses for joining us today. I've got a brief statement and then I've got a couple of questions. I recognize that the labor problems facing our agricultural industry are different in kind from those in other industries and are critically important to our nation's economy. The nature of agricultural work can, of course, deter even the hardest working of Americans. The long sporadic hours, a distant and secluded work site, nominal wages that result from low margins for food products, and the back-breaking physical labor itself all contribute to a relative lack of interest in and participation in these jobs by American-born workers. Creating a sustainable guest worker visa is essential for keeping our nation's farms and ranches fully staffed. That's why I introduced the DASH Act, a bill that would expand access to the H-2A program for additional categories of workers and employers. Addressing problems for agricultural workers and employers must be part of any visa reform, so I'm glad that we're having this discussion this morning. I was wondering if I could start with Ms. Eastman. If you could tell us a little bit why, sort of restate for us why you think that the H-2A program is insufficient, particularly as it relates to some of these industries like dairy farming and sheep herding. Microphone.
Excuse me. I can't speak to sheep herding because I have not had direct access with sheep. As far as the dairy farming goes, it's impossible. We have 2 dairy farms that do have H-2A workers, but they're here to repair fence and work in quarries that are going to be used as pasture. So it's not related to milking cows, which is simply an everyday function at these farms. So in part, it's not available to those folks.
Explain to us why it isn't. Why?
It's because right now H-2A is limited to a 10-month seasonal. So if you're an employer, and that's limited to the employer. The actual H-2A employee can stay here longer than that, but they have to transfer. So one individual employer can only have H-2A workers on site for 10 months out of the year.
Which doesn't work for some of these areas.
That's right, and it's not based on a fiscal year. Like you take apples when they come in, you know, it's August, and they'll stay to pick, prune, pack. They have to be gone by the end of May. So it's not limited to a fiscal year.
And this bill, in your opinion, addresses that problem.
Yes.
Tell us how it fixes the problem.
Well, it fixes the problem because I think actually Mr. Connor can speak to that better with the different types of visa applications.
Mr. Connor?
Well, it fixes the problem fundamentally by creating two different groups of the guest worker program. One would be the seasonal at-will that would be the most, I suppose, the most similar to the current H-2A program, but the other is a contract program, again, where you would have the ability to bring in year-round workers on a contract, as you noted, to perform those milking functions, the feeding functions on the farm, those kind of things that where you, you know, as was noted earlier, the cows don't stop producing milk. They produce 24/7 every day of the year.
That is a nice thing about cows. They're considerate in that regard to produce year-round. So looking long-term, do you think this solves it for the long-term? Do you see this as a long-term fix or something that we would have to tinker with every few years?
There's no question, Senator Lee, that we picture this as a long-term fix. This was fundamental to our coalition's efforts. We were not looking to come back and do this in a few years because we know that that's you know, not going to happen. You know, this has been a problem that's been developing really since the mid-1980s, and you know, we believe that the combination of the Blue Card program for our trained existing workforce and the viable guest worker program, both at will and contract, administered by USDA, provides that long-term access to the workforce, legal workforce that we're going to need to continue to produce the crops and the food for America.
And can you tell me how the caps work, the caps on the number of these visas that will be available?
Yes, there's a cap on these visa workers. In year one, that cap would be set at 112,333. As you can note by some of those numbers, this was a product of a lot of negotiation and compromise on both sides in terms of the setting of those caps. Another 112,000 would be then year two and year 3, so that then by year 3 the cap would be 337,000 workers. In no event could the cap go above that then between years 3 and 5. But then from years 5 onward, there would be no cap, but the Secretary of Agriculture would be empowered then to set a cap based upon need for the number of guest workers that we would have in the country.
Okay. And that's part and parcel of why you see this as a long-term fix, is because you're then allowing us to respond to changing economic circumstances through the Department of Agriculture.
Absolutely.
Okay. I see my time's expired. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Senator.